lead story, but apparently
Yeah.
not. That wasn't good enough. But yeah, I thought the article by Bill Carroll, which was a free Focusrite article, which is
Yep.
not always the case. I think Bill did a very nice job on laying out the opportunities for really for revenue management. Kind of, here's the situation. It's not exceptionally long. I think it's over. Yeah, it's like 16 pages or something like that. But there are pictures, which is good.
Well,
so
he made five strong points on his overall key findings, which I think is kind
really,
of turning into a sentiment these days.
Yeah, and he basically said, the 5 findings, and it was sponsored by Expedia. So I think one of the dimensions is, well, that's interesting. Why is Expedia really wanting to look at revenue management? Well, they're trying to figure out, how to help hoteliers and, the things that are important, right? So that makes sense. Maybe the hotel industry would want to do it internally for itself.
Wait. Hold on. Expedia wants to help Expedia.
Now, absolutely. No. Oh, yeah. They want to help the hoteliers and endear themselves to Expedia. Yes.
What Expedia wants to do is, and they've been reasonably public about this, at least in the last regime. I mean, we'll see how this takes place in the next regime.
Due to their lack of regime.
Right, exactly. But I mean, and I'm not here to beat up Expedia specifically. I just take my shots where I can. They, what they're trying to do is get deeper into the value chain.
Absolutely.
Right? Expedia's growth has peaked. Right, their growth they've grown as big as they're going to grow going in the dimensions that they've gone, and the fact that they bought Travelocity a few years back and they bought Orbitz a few years back and things along those lines. They're not going to achieve the kind of growth that they've achieved in the past by doing what they've done in the past. And so now they need to find ways to get deeper into the value chain. And so if they can play nice with rev managers and have rev managers see them as being not the enemy, that's actually a real benefit for Expedia and potentially opens up the opportunity for them to get deeper into the tech stack too.
Yep.
Which is another revenue stream. So I mean, that said, I think this is a great report. I think this is a really terrific report with some great insights in it. I always talk about Expedia and Booking and all those guys, and frankly, Google the same way these days, which is, hoteliers, hotel operators, hotel management companies, etc., should approach any of these large intermediaries the way that a male black widow spider approaches a female black widow spider. There may in fact be benefits of coming together, but also realize it could end up with you dead in the ditch. Be really confident that know what you're getting into. Go in with eyes wide open. Right?
Yep. That initial attraction and perhaps passion, and it doesn't always end up well.
Exactly right.
So, but the female spider benefits. Yeah. So that's
well. If I could just in two aspects of this. One is I appreciate the 5 points that he made.
Why don't we recap those? One is 5 key findings was information overload, and we talk about that a lot. There are lots of signals, but how do you figure out the right ones that really help you and do start driving things like attribution and conversion as opposed to all the other stuff. Second, pulling together, disparate systems, because between, and he just outlined channel management, revenue management, property management, central reservations, CRM, that's just the beginning of it, right? So those are, some pretty big systems there. Dynamic and complex distribution landscape. And very nicely, we talked last week about segments versus channels, and he just nailed that right there. Filling the information gap. Now, this was kind of the pitch for intermediaries, but travel intermediaries such as online travel agencies, search engines, metasearch, social media sites track a variety of data, and they can fill in the gaps. So that's kind of Expedia going, hey, we've got a lot of information that traditionally they did not share with the hoteliers. Now that's a new value proposition. And then last is the expanding role and impact of revenue managers, and it goes through. And actually, there are a couple nice little graphics kind of say the old world where there are kind of 3 things, and the new world where they're like the hub of a dozen things going on. So anyway, I thought it was a very nice, digestible thing, and probably good for an audience of owners and managers and brands and kind of everybody to understand what's going on with revenue management, I think.
Well, a couple of things, and please understand, I'm putting this in the chat room not to go over and take away from, and full credit goes to Focusrite for putting this up. So that do not consider this our content. This is literally cut and paste out of theirs, so you can see this. It is a free download, so it is accessible. So we're not betraying any confidence from theirs.
Right.
But
oh no, yeah, it is free. You have to register. Yep.
Yeah, you have to register. But these are the 5 points that were made out of this just for conversation today. But I think there seems to be a different drum beating this year. For years, and I think the point that he made out of all this is that we've been rattling our sabers about how we need to converge and how we need to blend and how we need to do this and why is it important. And we've been repeating ourselves now for years, yet not doing much about it. And now there's a few things that have gone off the mark, and I'm proud to say, like HSMA's Rocket program, try to push it off the mark. I know that all of us in our different disciplines, as we do things, try to push it off the mark and try to get it into functionality in a day-to-day basis. But for the most part, as an industry, we're still sitting around, oh, we need to converge. We're not doing anything really substantive as an industry. And I think, like the HSMA Rock in London, they're trying to push it off the mark on their topic is literally about the crisis of conversation of talking about it rather than actually doing it. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's a good point to say that, this year of 2020 being the new, year of, that we need to start making this work, not just talking about it, but actually doing it more than just getting started with it. There's still a lot of 101 programs out there, and we should be at 303 level now, or 404 level,
There's one big question, though. The one big question, though, is who pays for it. And that's between the fragmentation of the hotel industry. That's what creates
and when you say who pays for it, Robert, just as a point of clarification,
well, in terms of the text,
companies, brands,
owners,
asset managers, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Intermediaries, tech provider, SaaS based tech providers. Intermediaries, where do you get this stuff?
I have to say, I'll disagree on one part of it. The SaaS providers, I think, are pushing technology and data to us, but they can't affect its usabilities as much. They can pitch it all they want to, but at the end of the day, somebody internally has to decide that this is the 5 points that you just pointed out. There's a lot of data that's just not being understood to be used. There's lots of great platforms that are showing us what we should understand, but they're not giving it in a way or we're not using it in a way that is to our prime benefit. So the people that are actually paying for it right now is lost revenue for not doing it. So if they're already paying for this, the idea of it is, do they want to pay the expense of making the revenue?
But it's not on a budget that somebody has to approve, where somebody writes a check, and all of us, and that's why OTAs I've maintained since the beginning. Hoteliers love OTAs.
Yeah.
The business model's fantastic. You only pay for delivered business.
That's right.
There's a lazy model. Yeah.
But wait. Hold on. They shouldn't be a lazy model, though.
Oh, absolutely.
It shouldn't be. No, you're right.
Right.
They should be a model of, you should use OTAs to reach customers, reach guests you can't reach. You should use OTAs to, expand your reach into new markets. You should use OTAs to fill business in periods where demand is so soft that the cost of you acquiring that business direct isn't worthwhile. Like, there's a lot of great reasons to use OTAs, but use them intelligently, right?
Mm-hmm.
To me, you said something a moment ago, Lauren, that I think is really insightful about the data element. I think one of the reasons we keep having this discussion as opposed to action, and I'm going to blame marketers a little bit, but I'm a marketer, right? I am a marketer by trade and training and life. I'm going to blame marketing a little bit, and I'm going to blame ownership a little bit. In that we've underinvested in analytics and we've underinvested in understanding the analytics. Mm-hmm. The rev management teams are able to say, look, we opened up this channel. It drove a lot of business. We were able to pay the note this month. So we really should keep doing that. Lather, rinse, repeat, right? Yeah. And obviously the marketing teams for years have been less able to codify the hard dollar benefits of all of the different things that they do. There's a story I like to tell a lot when I sell. I will admit this is part of my sales pitch when I talk to marketing teams. Is, we've all seen this scenario of, a an owner or a GM or someone like that walks into the head of rev management's office or the head of sales office and says, I need, things are not looking so great next quarter, next year. I need you to cut your 10%. And the rev management folks or the sales folks are able to go, okay, but when I do that, let's talk about what that does to revenue. And then the owner or the asset manager or the GM goes, oh, wait, no, don't do that. Don't do that at all. And instead, they walk down the hall to the head of marketing's office and say, I need you to cut your budget by 25%. And the head of marketing is not in a position to push back on that because they have not put in place the right kinds of tools and the right kinds of techniques and the like to be able to codify that when I spend $1 over here, I get $4 back or $5 back or $6 back over here. Right. Not near to the level that they should have.
Who should do this? Is it revenue manager that should go sit down with a strategist or a strategy, or is it the marketing person that should be presenting this? Where does this land?
Well, I have a very strong opinion about this. I have an incredibly strong opinion about this, as you might imagine. My point of view is in many companies, right, outside the hospitality industry, marketing is responsible for the 4 Ps, right? They're responsible for product, and they are responsible for place, and they are responsible for promotion, and they are responsible for price.
Right.
And in the hospitality industry, we've taken the 4 Ps and we've split those into 4 distinct siloed functions. Right. So my argument is it doesn't matter who's responsible for it. It matters that the heads of those 4 functions are joined at the hip and aligned on strategic objectives and are aligned on how you measure it and are aligned on how the people who work for those different groups are incented to ensure that the whole thing becomes a flywheel that works together. In many organizations, it would be a chief commercial officer. It would be a chief marketing officer. It would be somebody who is at that level who is running this. In hospitality units themselves, we split those into 3 or 4 distinct functions, and they don't spend enough time talking to one another and aligned on objectives and aligned on bonuses and incentives and things like that enable them to actually pull the same levers in the same direction. So,
and that should be.
It doesn't matter. It matters how you get there, not who is ultimately tasked with it.
But for a typical hotel, it should be the general manager, right? Probably not the correct background, training, that sort of thing, which should be addressed by the industry. But if not, the director of marketing, right? I mean, that's it, because marketing should have, everything. When you start saying rooms division, reservations, things like that. I mean, reservations for decades was under rooms. In many cases, it still is. It needs to be really, really close to marketing. I mean, that's the bottom of the conversion funnel, right?
You say that about the GM, but in a lot of cases where there's a management group, hello, by the way, I'm here.
So we're on the field travel.
Where there's a management group, the GM is completely taken out of a lot of those marketing and revenue decisions. It's done by the management company. So we're in this weird situation. I am seeing more groups appointing a chief commercial officer or rolling revenue management into or underneath the director of marketing or something like that. So I think there's an acute awareness, but it's going to take time. And I think one of the challenges we face, not only is the product and the makeup and the management all complex, but the nature of our industry is that a lot of people don't stay in a gig for that long. In some of this stuff we're talking about really does take a multi-year strategy. So a lot of people are really focusing on the next 6-12 months to build up their resume so that they can get that next gig. So there's not an incentive naturally for them to work on a 5 or.
Nope.
Stuart likes to pause for dramatic effect.
Dramatic pause.
That is the legitimate mic drop.
That is the legitimate. But there was an interesting analogy I was having with a conversation with somebody. When there's in the Navy, when there's the admiral on the ship, you would think that they're in control of that ship.
Nope.
In fact, he's not. He's not in control of the ship. The captain is in control of the ship. Right. The admiral's in control of the fleet. He can tell the fleet where to go, but he doesn't tell the captain, the people on the ship, what to do.
Right.
What we face now, and I mean that analogy in the sense that with the hotels, we've taken so much away from what used to be the core of what a GM was. A GM was a omnipotent presence on the property that was responsible and reliable for all facets of business generation, business fulfillment, operational perspective, and we diluted that by putting the revenue management where ownership would literally walk past the GM and go talk to the revenue manager because the GM didn't know what the revenue manager knew. And so they turned into more responsible for running the ship and not really running the fleet in the sense of what they were doing strategically. And now we're in a position where the revenue management is overwhelmed with this variety of stuff. There's a lack of potential trust as we try to develop this convergence between marketing and revenue management, where is the marketer truly giving them the information they need in a way that's useful, on and on and on. We've had that discussion before. So there has to kind of be coming back to centralization of this, where one person, be a chief strategist, whether it be the GM, where they omnipotently control all things, or whether there's too much for the GM now, because maybe this is their role to just make sure the place runs, but there has to be some place where this aggregation of data, the ability to gather the business, yield the business, and to make sure the business is fulfilled has to go through something more than just two silos. So
I agree, but I also think it's dangerous, to suggest the only way to do it is that there has to be, one throat to choke. I have seen organizations where it works really well, where there is an operating committee or there is a, commercial committee, whatever you want to call it, where they work very much hand in glove with one another. And whether it's the GM or whomever who provides them what are their specific objectives that they're trying to reach, and what are the specific measures that they're held accountable to, such that, they're rowing the boat in the same, if I can continue your analogy, that they're rowing the boat in the same direction and not each pulling their oar in their own direction so that they look good. But you can do it with a committee as long as somebody is setting objectives for that committee and measures for that committee that in fact hold them accountable in the same direction. Right.
Yeah, that's the thing I've noticed.
As you start to talk about, it's one person, then suddenly it becomes territorial because I want to be the person. No, I want to be
right.
Not
a success struggle. Yeah, I think that the one thing I've seen in common with every group, and over, I've been in this industry almost 20 years, I used to meet with GMs when I first started. Those were the people making marketing decisions. And I can't think of a single property now with whom I meet with a GM. It's all someone that's in charge of marketing. But the ones that do it well, in every case, they do the exact same thing. How they do it differs. Who's dictating it differs. But they all have one scorecard. Everyone is in a line behind the same metrics and the same goals. And if you have that North Star that's guiding everyone, then whatever decision you make, it's always leading you back towards that North Star that everyone has agreed on. And then they communicate it constantly and really effectively across multiple channels. If you do that, if you have a single scorecard and you communicate that to the team and get everyone to buy into it, it makes everything else a whole lot easier because there's no guesswork. There's no going off in different directions. Everyone knows what their role is in the grander scheme of things.
Well,
and
because
they all... It also, I love the fact that you said scorecards specifically, as opposed to metric, right? Because, the other mistake that I see people make is they think there's one overarching metric that is the holy grail. And I mean, don't get me wrong. We all love ProPar. We all love, RevPAR. We all love GoPar. And there's lots of different ways to look at it. But there's not a single metric. It is the right set of metrics that lead to better RevPAR, that lead to better ProPar, right?
Yeah, but it starts off with, I don't know if you want to call it the purpose or the philosophy, why does that property exist, right? And it's just the classic, you take that purpose, you then have objectives, right? You've got an annual plan, hopefully, that specifically says, here are our objectives. You can have strategies to develop those objectives. You can have tactics. You can have metrics for all those various things like that, but they need to roll into an overall scorecard, which ties back to that strategy. You go, wait a second, does this stuff line up? And I think that's one of the parts that's really missing because of that siloing. You wind up with these conflicting objectives. The revenue management people don't like talking to the marketing people because the marketing people are going, I don't want to talk to them. They want to keep increasing the prices, or sales, I guess would be a good example. We don't want the prices going up because I'm measured on room night production and I can achieve that goal much easier with a low price sort of thing. And you got something as basic as that, where all of a sudden, how would you expect something like that to succeed?
Which, by the way,
you've got two pillars battling each other.
By the way, that's a perfect. If I can tie what you just said to something very specific, most of the groups that I work with, a stated objective is we don't compete on price.
Right.
Period.
Absolutely.
Right. We might do value adds. We might do other things.
Create value for the guests, that sort of thing. Yeah.
But
the price is kind of an outcome. Well, this needs to be the price to make this stuff happen.
Exactly.
This is the right price.
But the nice thing about it is when you start with an objective like that, it doesn't, marketing then doesn't have the lever to say, well, let's just do a sale.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I love marketing. I am a marketer. If your go-to response as a marketer every time business is soft is let's drop prices by 10%, you're a terrible marketer. You're bad at it. Seriously. Because any idiot can lower price.
That's right. But that's why Lauren does 12%. That makes him a genius.
No, I want to be really clear about this because I'm sure somebody out there right now is stewing, right? But the reality is, it's not that you should never lower prices. It's not that you shouldn't have different prices at different times of year. It's that if your go-to is drop price, you're not thinking about it hard enough, right?
Right. Yep.
We don't charge.
Well, I would argue that a lot of revenue managers I work with on the other side are like, oh, we have a hole. Let's throw out a discount on Expedia. Or let's throw, like
for sure.
Absolutely.
That other mentality that is a hard thing to battle against.
By the way, Stephanie, I completely agree. I'm going to beat up the marketers because they spend most of my time talking to them. By all means, you are more than free to beat up the rev managers who do the same thing.
I know. Julie needs to be here to stand up for herself because we've talked about the convergence model a lot. And again, I feel like it's a little bit of circle talking in terms of like, okay, we need to have convergence. What are we going to do about it? So.
Right.
Yeah, but and again, there were a variety of I sometimes there's an underlying theme if people do read all the articles, which I assume they cannot possibly do that and would not do that if they could. There are interesting there's an interesting thread between them because you wind up with some situations here where you go, okay, well, so what are the objectives of the hotel groups and what should they be doing? And one of the articles was, where was it? The changes experts think hoteliers should make in 2020, right? Which came from Hotel News Now. But you start looking at these things and it's, it really winds up being, really focused on how do you cut costs and how do you there's no discussion really of convergence or anything like that in these things at all. Yeah, it's like, oh, well, it's post, RevPAR growth and things like that. And here we're going to go, wind up looking at, various thresholds or, sales efforts should be more proactive than reactive. Really?
Are we moving on to that article? Because I have one last thing about the Bill Carroll report.
And go ahead.
An overarching thing on the
no problem.
On the Hotel News Now thing. So this is a really silly little point, but I thought the Bill Carroll report was terrific. And by the way, we should give credit where due. It's Bill and it is, I got to scroll up and find the right name. Give credit to both. And Kathy.
Oh, Kathy. Yeah.
So to both Bill and Kathy, well done. However, they do one thing in there that made my skin crawl immediately. It's really, really, really tiny, which is that they introduced a new TLA or 3-letter acronym where they referred to channel management systems as CMSs. Please don't do that.
No,
please let's not get on board with that. A CMS is already a thing.
right. Yeah.
CMS is our content management system.
CHMS. Capital C, small h, capital MS.
Or, CMS is 3 syllables.
But then that's a 4-letter acronym.
One syllable isn't going to make or break your day. So let's just call them channel managers and move
on. Well, no, Stuart, it's the English equivalent. I really use the Russian character, but to do it, that's kind of...
Okay, got it.
I want to give a small shout out to Bill. Bill and I are both consultants at Cayuga Hospitality, so we've actually written some articles together and things. So, and
you name drop in.
I know. I love Bill so much. Like I love that man. I'm gonna see him in New York when we're there for HSMAI.
Well, if we're doing that, if we're doing the name dropping, Stephanie, I should point out that Bill and I live in the same town, and I actually saw him, but not to speak to, in the ShopRite Liquors on Christmas Eve or the Sunday before Christmas as we were stocking up for.
You meet all the best people in liquor
You say
stores. I'm
stocking
telling you
or
right now. That's the
stalking?
best people to meet is in liquor stores.
Stocking up. I didn't get to see him.
Now wait,
speak, so I didn't-
what Tim didn't say. Yeah, what Tim didn't say is each of them are in, ShopRite Liquors 5 days a week. That's the
That's right, we hang
for
out the
several
back.
hours.
Play chess.
Tim didn't say that's his part-time.
No, I actually only.
I'm sure he was shopping for somebody else.
Exactly. I'm sure he was buying a gift, as was I. That's
Yeah.
Of course.
I don't drink when I have
Self-I says. All right. With that, let's flip it over to the OTA conversation because you pointed out about OTAs and their usabilities and so forth. And I know that a lot of us use OTA insights and so forth. And the article that that Robert shared with us had a really interesting statistic in the middle of it associated with the bleed of OTAs when it comes to rate parity issues on branded versus independent and local chains and so forth. And I didn't know if you guys got dug that far into the article to take a peek at it. I'll throw the article link right up here. But it was a really interesting dive on how painful OTA impact can be on your rate parity bleed for non-contracted channels.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yes, but if you shut down Priceline, the problem goes away.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud?
That little inner voice sometimes sneaks out. But it goes back. Now that's squarely, in revenue management's hands when it comes to that. But it's also a whack-a-mole because you can tighten up your contracts with the OTAs.
Well, that's number one. That is number one because so many of these contracts have gaping holes in them, and the OTAs. I mean, we just picked on Priceline or Booking Holdings. Might as well pick on Expedia. Hotwire was not really intended to list the specific number of reviews by property. It was supposed to be an opaque platform, and Hotwire's product manager told me point blank, wow, doing that really boosted conversion. It was like, no shit. So it's like, yeah, you remove the opacity. Yeah, that's exactly it. So, basically they're playing on a negotiated rate under the assumption that you would not see the hotel name. It wasn't considered that there could be other attributes. And they've gotten egregious on it. Now they have click on the picture and they will show you a picture of the actual hotel. So it's like, oh, gee, maybe I can drag this over to Google Images and see where, it's just, or there's another box. I mean, they have so many little, conversion tool. Click on this. It will be one of these two hotels. You go, well, wait, that's the 4-star hotel. That's only a 3-star hotel. It can't be that one. It's just really, really egregious. But, if it's not prohibited.
Yeah,
they shouldn't be doing it. I don't know.
I was booking a Priceline or looking for I was looking for a hotel in Charleston earlier last year for an anniversary getaway with the wife, and I always shop around. I usually try to book direct, and fortunately these guys were smart because I found a lower rate on Priceline, called the GM directly, and they honored the same rate. But it was literally on Priceline. It was saying it's one of these 3 properties. It's in this location, which 2 of them weren't, and underneath it said, and people that booked this deal recently got this
that's
particular
the other.
property.
That's another one.
So it's like, well, you're basically telling me exactly what I'm going to book. So, so I called them and said, "Hey, this is stupid. Can I get that rate?" And they said, "Sure." And it was great.
So Steph, are you making it to the marketing conference?
I was going to tell Stuart, you're lucky that you got a hold of the GM because half the time, I mean, how many frustrating times do you have an untrained front desk person and you call and they're like, "Oh no, our rate is this," because they look in the PMS and it gives them one rate and they're like, so their only option is to do a rate override. And
no, I asked for the GM specifically, so I'm that guy.
Yeah.
He's like, who's this random person calling me?
Oh, no, I'm not.
Some over entitled guest thinks that they know what they're doing.
You may want to treat me fairly.
Some wacky Australian.
You know who I am. I know Stephanie. I dropped all your names. I was like, I know Stephanie Smith. I know Tim Peter. I didn't say Robert because that would probably distract.
No, that would be.
Yeah, and as soon as he mentioned me, he was like, "Oh, sorry, no way."
Yeah, click.
Hello. Yeah. Steph, are you making?
No, I just said Lauren Gray and hoped he just. Sorry. Go ahead. I will stop joking. You can be serious.
No, Steph, are you making it to the marketing conference in a few weeks or no?
I'll be there. Who's gonna say? I have a breakout, so who's gonna come sit in my breakout?
Really?
Oh, I'll be there. Well, we're going to do live coverage anyway, but just have a quick curiosity. We talk about OTAs and so forth. We're all settled in with our hotel rates. I know, Robert, you're the king of this. What did you end up paying for a hotel room?
Oh, I think I am at $84 per now, excluding there is a $22 resort fee, so probably $106 for a 4.5-star hotel.
Okay.
The Warwick, it's nice.
Well, I know Stuart. Now, I know Stuart's high on the hog, so he doesn't have to worry about rates. He just pays whatever Marquis asks him to.
I have people that book it for me, so.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's yeah.
No, I'm in for 5 nights for about $600 total, including taxes and everything like that.
I might be using an employee rate.
Oh, those are the best. Okay. Those are the best.
I think you can do better on Hotwire. I don't know.
Probably, but I'm too lazy when the Marriott Marriott rate is open.
I, on the other hand, want hotels to be successful and I'm actually paying a decent rate, Robert.
I'm conflicted. Hey, I use these things as poster children when I speak to clients. Look at this.
I'm spending a nickel.
No, literally, it's a game now, right? It's me versus the stupidest revenue manager in the city, and there's always somebody steps up. I mean, it's without fail. It's just really,
and
it's really crazy.
Who's doing everything right and doing all the things we talk about all the time, lost out on a room night's revenue because you went to the lowest
5 nights
denominator.
5 nights.
Worse, 5 nights.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And I gave them ample, and let me tell you, all the hotel groups for booking direct, getting those deals. Why pay a 20%, a 40% premium, right?
So how long did it take you? How long did you spend searching
for those?
Find that rate?
30 minutes max.
Well, that's still a long time. I thought you were going to say longer though.
Well, but it's a game.
30 minutes would more than pay for the hotel room.
That's true. That's true, but it's a game. It's like, why do people gamble? Why do people go to Las Vegas? You talk to
never understood this as long as
you talk to Steve Wynn. He has not met a single person in his history in Las Vegas who came out ahead, right? Ever. Why would people go there? It's entertainment, right? You came out ahead? No.
I don't gamble.
Well,
by definition,
you came out even. Yeah, you came out even. Exactly. Yeah, but again, it's that sort of thing. Now it's just a challenge, and so I have a little game I have a little process. It doesn't take very long. This one did because it was 5 nights and it was New York, and it was more intriguing to me to really dig into like what was going on. Because again, I documented a bunch of this. I've got these little spreadsheets. I'm like, here's the conversion rate. I've done the same thing with, for clients with resort fees to break out and go and look at this. You can't tell which one is higher or lower. So
the movie Swordfish with John Travolta, where the guy who saw it as challenged to break a code,
Oh yeah.
He sits in his room with 15 monitors and just break. Anyways, I do want to
make
sure.
Anybody else going to the conference? I think January 8th, right? Robert, you said that tickets go on.
Oh, on the 21st, the Stephen Colbert tickets.
Oh, well, yeah, but I think on January 8th they have a sale for Broadway tickets for during.
Oh yeah, yes.
Broadway week while we're there,
it's right? Broadway week, so half price. Actually, I already got my tickets for Thursday and Friday night seeing the Harry Potter show too, which tickets were available. They had a special. I think it was Black Friday or something for $50 a seat, which is substantially lower. Yeah. Front row balcony, great seats.
Even though Kat's not here, we do want to make sure everyone reminds themselves that this is Human Trafficking Month, not in the positive sense, but in the negative sense, that this is the month that we have to be mindful that. And I don't understand why it isn't being more pervasive. I mean, they're bringing it on the news and so forth. We even see that locally. But there seems to be no infrastructure other than a growing infrastructure, I guess. I mean, it's very small right now because it's not very widespread, about training staff, actually going in and training staff, not just giving them little handout cards. Because locally here in Southwest Florida, the police are walking around with little like business cards almost. And it's I applaud them for their effort. and on it is the signs of what could be human trafficking. Fatigue, deprivation, overt control of a person, whatever it is. There's this checklist of stuff that they can be handing out. But the hotel should be rallying around this, having their own events of let's get together in a meeting room. Let's have a staff meeting. Let's, what are hotels doing? It seems like a very quiet message. I mean, I think hotels should be out there talking about how they had a staff meeting this month about teaching about the awareness of human trafficking, what to look for, and so forth. Because
I think that they shy away from it because of the negative connotation. So if they're promoting it, then people might assume that they have a problem with it, and there's something that they need specifically on property to fix. So I think that's probably why they.
I agree.
Yeah. I also agree with that.
I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying.
No.
It's a stigma. Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. I also think it's true, and I'm going to say one of the more cynical things you will ever hear me say. There are a lot of problems in this world, and this is certainly one of them, where the folks who are most impacted by it, it's the things that don't have an economic number tied to them, right? Like who's looking for these people? You got to raise money, you got to raise awareness, you got to do these things, and that's a tough thing to do because these folks don't have a voice to start with, right? So it doesn't get enough attention in society generally. I agree with you. The hospitality industry should do more about it. It's tough to get on people's radar because it's a tough topic to talk about because of everything that Stephanie just said, and also because of the fact that hey, look over here. We'd rather ignore the problem.
Yeah. And one group who's doing a great job is AHOA. And I'm going to say, normally I pick on people who aren't on the show. Like, Ed's still obviously hungover from New Year's Eve, I'm sure, but that would be obvious. But Kat is probably working on this for the human trafficking thing for AHOA. So she's completely cleared from having to be on the show. She's doing much more important things. Yes.
Yeah, much more important things for me. No, but it is true. And I do want to make it a point that we never show up for through this month that we keep bringing that attention to it because I, unlike the industry, am more than happy to point at it.
That's right.
By the way, I'd like to go back to Stephanie asking about the shows. So obviously, I live right outside of New York, so I'm not going to New York for any other reason than it's Tuesday, right? But for everybody who's going to New York, see a show, go to a restaurant, do something, spend some money while you're there.
January 8th or 9th, it's Broadway week. The big shows of the Book of Mormons and things like that, which really don't have a lot of different, normally have half price tickets, at least for a little while on the first couple days of the year.
Stuart and I are going to go on a drinking binge.
I wasn't aware of this, but I'm totally in.
New York in January.
Where's my invite?
You're
with the best of them.
I pitched you guys. I have two extra tickets for Stephen Colbert Tuesday night because both my wife and I asked for them for two people, and we both got them. So let me know now.
I would love to, but I'm going to be graciously accepting Adrian Awards on that night.
Yeah, a platinum maybe.
Oh, that's right.
He might be on the stage thanking his mother.
I don't know.
I'm not going to the Adrian Awards, so instead I'm going to go see Mr. Colbert. So,
no, I would like to join you. Hey, maybe if they keep me on the Adrians, I'll come join you.
Oh wait, it's over at 7:30. I guess I missed the cocktail reception. You don't want to miss that part of the Adrians.
Especially with me. I'm going to be the geek with the 10-foot pole walking around with a camera on the top of it, so I'll be getting attention from that. So it'll work out.
Lauren will be pointing out all the people he would.
Are you going to get to live broadcast?
Oh yeah, I'm going to do a live broadcast, and then we'll do some recordings and stuff, and probably be about as obnoxious as they'll let me getting video of people. So this should work out pretty well for me. Okay, well, with that in mind, Mr. Robert, since you are the curator of the cause when it comes to topics, you hit two that I want. I have another couple more, but I don't want to keep jumping in on this. What other one would you like to point out?
Well, every once in a while, I'll throw in one that I really disagree. I thought the Skift article on the bold and outrageous predictions, they had some really horribly bad predictions for the next decade. I really thought they were just completely way up. And Dennis Schall's a friend of mine. Dennis does great stuff. Huge respect. I don't know where the hell he came up with that Amazon is going to acquire Expedia. That just makes no sense to me. Now, again, maybe he's talked to Barry Diller and Bezos. Who knows?
You got this recorded, so you might be eating your words. You never know.
I'm happy to eat my words if I'm wrong, but to me that makes no. C-Trip buying TripAdvisor is partially already in process. They've invested $300 million. I mean, that's already happening. So that's it. But the Amazon, I don't know if he's just trying to stir up things. They had JetBlue going away. That would be sad. I don't know, but I don't know. Airbnb staying away from flights. It's like, yeah. Okay, but again, I think they will wind up having some sort of functionality for it because they want that leading indicator of how do you get, these people are traveling lists, so how can you start teeing things up? Why not do that internally? I think they can do it fairly inexpensively. So.
I do see one thing where he talked about Salesforce will enter travel. I don't see it as entering travel as in being yet another provider. I see it entering into the way of being a service provider.
Yeah.
And in that whole Navis conversation, Cendine.
Salesforce will enter travel. Yeah, not a chance.
No,
just ridiculous.
No, but as a service provider, I can see where they might have the potential of stepping in and broadening what they're doing with more than just being a data service provider in that sense. So,
I don't know. They could do more specialized travel. Salesforce does a lot of,
and being successful
the App Store and the development, the ecosystem that they've developed has already done a lot. I mean, Greg Hopkins wound up, can't remember the name of the company he built, was basically on Salesforce and then sold it to Delphi, right? The Delphi folks who were then acquired by Amadeus. People have been doing this, providing tools for it. I mean, that's a great area to work with, but I don't see Salesforce going into it themselves. Why would they? The margins aren't as good. I mean,
they're definitely, yeah. Well, given there's one thing I actually surprised Stuart, which is very hard to surprise Stuart on technology.
Sorry. There were a couple others. Hotel companies or brands will go away. It's like, no. All indications are these things are consolidating more. But yes, there will be some that go away. Will brands be less prominent? Yes, a lot of things undermine the value of the brands, but these big brands aren't going away.
I'm gonna push back on that one, Robert.
Okay.
I think that the number of brands that exist, the number of let's reframe this. The number of holding companies will continue to consolidate.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I think that if we think that within 10 years' time, Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, Wyndham, IHG, Accor, that's probably the big six, right? I think getting somebody.
They will get.
And I should be pulling out somebody from Asia, a Green Tree or somebody like that.
Right. Yeah.
But if we think that those 6 or 7 will be still standing as independent entities in 10 years' time, no way.
Yeah. Oh no, exactly.
I'm not gonna pick who or how or when or why or any of that kind of stuff.
No, there'll be consolidation, but again, they're still adding more brands, right? That's the individual brands. Yeah. So maybe it'd be.
I mean, some brands will go away, right? Some brands will likely fall by the wayside because, let's take I don't know, Starwood, right?
Well, Starwood the holding company disappeared. There was never a Starwood hotel. The brands all still exist.
Sheraton, rather. Excuse me. Sorry, I misspoke. Sheraton, right? I think there are some brands out there, and I picked that one at random. You could pick others. I don't mean to knock on Sheraton specifically, but there's a handful of brands out there that are tired in the consumer marketplace, and they may just roll them up into something else, reflag them, and move on.
Sheraton just got a brand new logo. I mean, that
exactly.
Everything
They
about
are
an example. I've been on vacation for a couple of weeks, but
But again, Marriott's not going to do. Marriott should have rationalized all those brands, right, and not had 30. You could say, "Yep, we're going to wind up with 7 or 8," and we're.
But then
really
they'd have less.
I don't think that's.
But then they can't. Then they can't have 90 properties in Manhattan. Right?
Exactly.
You're misunderstanding me. I don't think they're going to get to 7 or 8. But again, if you tell me that, Marriott's going to have 35 or 40 brands at the end of 2030, I would believe that. If you tell me that it will be the 30 that they have today plus 15 new ones, I think a much more likely outcome is they add 18 and they fold 2 into them.
I don't think they're going to fold many.
Yeah.
Because every time they do that,
2 is not many. 2 out of 30 is not.
I think the pressure, you look at those brands that they decided to keep. I mean, and you go, why Delta? Do they really need Delta hotels? Do they really need Westin and Renaissance and Sheraton and those? Right.
I am willing to put money on this.
I thought you weren't a betting man. You literally 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. Hey, wait a second.
That's the Tim that doesn't go to the liquor store. He's the not betting man. But when you get Tim after a liquor store,
do you know,
put some money on the table.
Actually, do you know this is one of my favorite tactics? Right. This is actually something I read in a book years ago. I read a great book by a poker player who said that people always equate decision makings in business to a chess game.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that actually she was a professional poker player. And she said that's a terrible analogy for business because in chess, you have perfect information. You know everything that's on the board. You know everything that's off the board. And there are a finite, though huge, number of moves available to you, right? But it's a very finite thing. Business is much more like a poker game. You don't have perfect information. You don't know a lot about what your competition's going to do. You can't see all the cards, right? You don't know all the cards you're going to be dealt, right? And you have to make wagers based on that. And it's about, are you making good decisions that have good outcomes? Are you making good decisions that have bad outcomes? Are you making bad decisions that have bad outcomes? Are you making bad decisions that have good outcomes because you got lucky, right?
Yep.
And you focus on the process. And one of her tricks, and there's a lot of research that backs this up, is if you're willing to bet on something, and how much are you willing to bet can be a great way of saying, how confident do you feel about this thing? Mm-hmm. So, I'm not going to bet you $1,000 that I'm right on this. I wouldn't bet anywhere near that, but I'd bet you 10, right? That
10,000. Wow. Okay.
$10. I might even bet you $50. So that there is no way that in 10 years' time, all of the brands that Marriott holds today are still active and run by Marriott.
Oh, I think they'll sell some. They'll sell
more
some
brands.
Yeah.
I feel very comfortable they will have more brands. You and I are saying the same thing. Because what you're saying is exactly right. They absolutely, the brands don't exist for consumers. The brands exist for developers. You're 100% right. I agree completely. You're talking to a guy, as you used to, who used to work for Cendant. Like, I get that game really, really well.
And they sold Nights In. Cendant sold Nights In.
And
so
they
that's
sold
possible.
Nights In. Right.
That's right.
And for obvious reasons, I don't make predictions about Cendant specifically. Wyndham specifically. Right. But I would be shocked if Wyndham had the same portfolio of brands and if they didn't shutter one somewhere along the way while adding 5 more, right, to appeal to developers. But there's no way that all of those brands are going to be commercially viable to developers in 10 years' time. And then, brands die from time to time. You replace them with something else. And I cannot predict which ones, and I wouldn't predict when it will occur. But I feel really comfortable saying, I'd put money on the fact that in 10 years' time, Marriott's portfolio of brands might be 40 brands or might be 50 brands. Mm-hmm. But at least a couple of the ones that they have today will no longer exist within Marriott's portfolio, and probably because they don't exist at all. If they can get somebody to give them $1 million for one of them, they'll sell it off. But if they can't,
maybe the problem is the number of rooms, though, and it opens up those contracts. If they can figure out a way of how to transition, the owner from A to B, but the problem is that B is going to have to probably be a new brand, and they don't want they don't want the New York Sheraton or whatever. Or anything that they don't own and manage, because they've lost that dimension where they could just go, let's move these around because we got the ownership, we got the management. That's great. But now they go, wait a second. But they go, wait a second. The Sheraton, and when, at least when Starwood was acquired, 60% of the rooms were in, I believe, Sheratons and Westins. Right? Those were the two, which were kind of problematic brands for them. And they're still out there. There are hundreds of properties. And they won't. Wall Street won't permit them to take that kind of risk. Flat out.
I absolutely. You and I are saying something that is so close to the same thing. It's not even.
Oh yeah. I just don't know which ones go away.
Right.
That's the weird thing because they keep adding deltas. Yeah.
Hilton has a new brand coming out again.
They're adding JW Marriott's. Yeah, they keep adding to kind of the smaller brands. Renaissance is actually doing pretty well, I think. They've done a pretty good job repositioning it. But
by the way, this is doable. We did it at Wyndham. Ramada Limited went away as a brand, right?
Yeah, but Ramada didn't. Yeah.
No, Ramada didn't, but Ramada Limited did. I think, I could be mistaken, Ramada Plaza went away as a brand.
Probably.
Okay. Right.
Oh, no. Well, those are sold to... Wait, Ramada Plaza, I think, was sold to Park Place or something like that. And
but the
those
brand
Park
no longer exists.
Right.
Brand,
yeah, but
right?
Ramada still exists. So some of those are sub-brands.
So let me just throw some wrenches into the gears on some of this stuff, because throughout of history, there's a cyclic build and deconstruct. Right. Look at some of the movie shakers. We have some articles on Oyo that you have out here too, some black marks on them and so forth. But there are lessons learned from all of these transitions of growth and so forth. We know that from a brand's perspective, the value assets associated with brand is centralization, tech stack accumulation, on and on and on. There's value propositions associated with brand relationship. There is also negative things associated with brand relationship: brand saturation, brand dilution, brand complexity.
Absolutely.
So in the process of looking years ahead, maybe as we evolve through, brands turn less into about centralization and more about individualization with standardization. I know that's a lot of Asians, but
no. Well, look at the rise of soft brands. Let's be really clear when we're using our terms here. What Robert and I are debating right at the moment is the flag that you hang on the building as opposed to the holding company that franchises that flag. Right. If you look at the growth of soft brands at the holding companies that franchise those flags, you're absolutely seeing that, and I think that's something we're likely to see a lot more of over the next,
And brands provide resource that it says, okay, look, so you're not going to be XYZ brand, but you are going to use our tech stack. We're going to provide you resource capabilities, and also we're going to give you resources to create individuality. So we're not competing as a single entity, but we're competing on the individualities that we can create for ourselves, whether it be a brand silo or whether it be allowance to go off and be on your own so you can create your own identity.
But that's the soft brands. That's Autograph,
it's a soft
right?
Brand. Right. It's a soft brand.
And those brands are cool, but if you look at the development pipeline of the three, Hilton, Marriott, IHG, the development pipeline are not the soft brands. Like where their growth is still in their core, limited service and extended stay hotels. So as much as I would like to see more soft brands in terms of differentiation, individuality, that's not where their development pipeline lies.
Yeah,
but
because those are harder to hang on.
Too. I mean, you start building a hotel without a 3-year plan. So all of what we're looking at in the build cycle right now, pipeline, is what's anticipated within a 3-year cycle of events to this process. This is not a turn on a dime decision process. This is going to take years of reevaluation where Marriott says, okay, look, we're going to give you your tech stack. We're going to allow you to splinter as to what you are and your identity. And if you look at their internalization of building their own resources to supply, like their e-commerce department and so forth, they might provide value propositions of supporting them to build their own business under the technology umbrella that they might provide.
Not Marriott.
No, not Marriott, not Hilton. And by the way, those companies exist. They're called Preferred and Leading Hotels of the World.
To a degree, but they don't offer all the other positive aspects of tech stack and all the other supplemental purchases and finances.
Not necessarily the financing. So.
Not necessarily.
Well, actually, I take that back. I take that back. Leading would add X millions of dollars to the asset value. With the plaque added was worth X millions of dollars.
So you see what I'm saying? The trend of this could be something like this, a dissimization of this process.
Well, I disagree. And unfortunately, here's the thing, Lauren, I want you to be right.
Oh, yeah. I completely agree. Right. I wish that was the case.
However, if you look at the trend, so historically, the numbers I used to quote for years, and I stopped quoting them because they're not correct any longer, but historically, the numbers I used to quote was that 65% of the rooms in the Americas were branded rooms, right? They were flagged properties, and 35% were independent. And overseas, 35% were flagged properties and 65% were independent. The trend in both major regions, which is the most U.S. centric thing I think I've ever said out loud in front of a group. But in the Americas versus Europe versus Asia is towards increasing flags, right? The problem with what you're describing for a Marriott, and again, I have a weird background here because I worked for a large franchisor and then I worked for the leading hotels of the world. So I've been on both sides of this. The problem you have with properties that are too independent, and I say this as a guy who worked for leading, is you have to have some thread that ties them together so that you can market them effectively on a regional level, on a national level, on a global level. There has to be some thread that ties them together. If you look at the way Marriott handles its soft brands, they're not that soft. I can't speak for all of the soft brands that are out there, but the hoops that they make you jump through to be a soft brand, you're independent, but not super independent. They put a lot of restrictions on you. And precisely for the reasons that Stephanie said, you can't scale it well, right? For scalability reasons, which is how they make money and how they go to the street every quarter, they need to be able to say, we're at it, how many rooms does Marriott have now? I don't know the number. 1.1 million or something.
Yeah, whatever
like
it is.
Right?
Around 1 million. Yeah.
We'll call it 1 million rooms. For them to go to the street at the end of Q1 and have a material impact on their forward-looking earnings, they can't add 1,000 rooms, right? Yeah. They have to be adding chunks of rooms, right? 100,000 rooms. And you cannot add 100,000 rooms if you say, that's going to be, 1,000 100-room independent properties who can do whatever the hell they want. Right. It can be, we signed 1,000 courtyards.
Well, and look what Hyatt did. Hyatt didn't really they may have another soft brand now, but they basically have small luxury hotels now as Hyatt's soft brand, right? They're all now part of the Hyatt, the World of Hyatt program, and yes, they're still the association doing what they do. That's a pretty smart move for Hyatt, as opposed to trying to get that portfolio of I don't know how many hundreds of hotels it is, but it's a lot. Hyatt wouldn't have been able to do that, or they would have spent a fortune. So that makes a lot of sense. But one thing, the challenge with Marriott here is what ones go away, right? Ritz-Carlton, they're keeping. St. Regis, they're keeping. JW Marriott, you could say probably should have gone away. They're adding. Ritz-Carlton Reserves, that's kind of a sub-brand of Ritz-Carlton because it's home. Luxury Collection is the soft brand for that, luxury sector. W, they're trying to reconfigure. Edition is working pretty well. Really small. Could it go away? Yes, but I think they're having success. Okay. But you kind of go through the list. Marriott, Sheraton has a lot of them. All those different things. But they're adding in all these. Le Meridian. I don't know, but they're adding hotels.
There's 3 points to this process. We know that some of these names are based on the fact that somebody with ownership on something, another ownership said, I want to be something different than that St. Regis, so I want to be Reserve, okay? And make me different name and so forth. So here's my rationale. There's a progression of this that your standard Knights Inn on the side of the road will probably stay branded because there's no really value proposition of changing them to the right between point A nowhere and point C somewhere nowhere else. Okay, so that's not going to really help them. But these individual hotels
not at scale, by the way, not at scale. We see cases of individual properties who are becoming the kitschy roadside motel and the like, but not at scale.
Not at scale. Now, these large luxury resorts and so forth that could create their own identity because of the uniqueness of their product, I think could fracture. The second of it is we're not accounting for the development of technology to handle the scalability of control. With technology growing as it is, there is the potential that it doesn't take an army of people in a cubicle world that sits in Bethesda, okay, to run this stuff. You could have, and I'm making this up as a contra conversation, 1,000 room hotels at scale, being able to be controlled with things like, there's these new platforms that do dynamic length of stay gate fencing for revenue management that's yieldable based on demand. And all these really cool things are rolling into softwares now so that you could have an ability to mitigate the scaling of the fracturing without losing the centralization of the value proposition.
Okay? No, I agree. The tech stack will change because you look at the example of Saunders. You will, within the next decade, there will be distributed hotel brands, right? Where it's these units in these buildings across the city, and it's a Marriott, whatever their new brand is going. That'll be a new Marriott brand, right? It's just gonna be nice upscale apartments or whatever.
It's like Airbnb without a building, basically. It's like you're going to have fragmenting.
Right. Oh no, that will definitely happen. The problem with Marriott is you aren't going to have whatever 1,000, 100-room, 50-room hotels if you have to load them into Marcia. And that ain't happening.
Marcia's talking to you. Okay, you're gonna walk into the room with Marcia, and there's gonna be a little hologram that pops in. What are you doing, Dave? You know what I mean? It's gonna be.
The problem with Marcia
will never have a hologram feature.
Marcia is so big. It's the same challenge as the GDSs, right?
It's a big Bethesda.
It's a 6-bit. Underneath that monster is a 6-bit operating system, which is highly inflexible. Marriott cannot confirm. Marriott still cannot confirm connecting rooms, right? Really basic function. It costs them tens of millions of dollars. They can't justify the ROI of really being able to embrace the family market. That's a pretty huge opportunity that they've looked at. I don't know how many times. They may have just given up, but they can never crack that nut. They've got to figure that out, which of course is what Amadeus is banking on, right?
Basic things like that.
Yeah, but Amadeus is, I'm sure, banking on that, going, hey, look what we did for IHG. So they came off the platform. You guys need to do something.
Right.
You do this, and now you can go start doing
on some of this stuff. I mean, Valhalla is still sitting on a shelf somewhere.
They are not going to use Valhalla.
They're not going to use Valhalla.
They will never
use it, but they're going to learn from it.
No,
I mean, it had its value propositions that never got to market.
It's gone. It was deceased. They don't want to look at it. The guys who did it don't work for Marriott.
And Lauren, I want to go back to your points about will tech enable this? Sure, I banked literally when I started my consultancy in 2011, right? So almost 9 years ago. I banked on the very fact that there'd be enough independent properties to keep us growing for the next 10 to 15 to 20 years, right? So I actually encourage lots of properties to stay independent. So you can absolutely do it.
And it almost worked for Tim, but he only has 40% of his income comes from wholesale liquor now. So that's
and unfortunately 0% of the profits.
Well, you have that inventory shrinkage problem. That's exactly.
Spillage. We call it spillage. No, but I encourage properties to remain independent. I think there's a lot of opportunities for properties to go independent and get access to the marketing and sales channels that they need to without partnering up with a brand. I think you absolutely can succeed and make a go of it and be a growing concern, not just a going concern, by doing that. It doesn't suit Marriott's business model. It doesn't suit Wyndham's business model. It doesn't suit Hilton's business model, et cetera. If we look at the platforms that had existed 5 years ago, who also provided those services, look at Sabre. They're getting out of the business of marketing hotels independently and the like, and partnering up with the brands to help provide those services to them because it's a better growth channel. Yeah. Will somebody backfill in and come in and say, hey, we can serve that market and we'll get you connectivity and we'll get you distribution and we'll get you all the things that you need? Probably. But again, this is just this ongoing cycle. I was predicting what you're talking about 8 years ago, literally built my business on it. And all the evidence suggests that I was wrong because literally we're seeing more and more rooms become branded every single year. Right.
Yeah.
So half the reason I think is the financing. It's just easier to
financing thing.
More ready to give money to.
But I see
where are the incentives, right? You got to follow the business models
generate to grow when you're a million room brand. I mean, you have to remember when you're a million room company, you are not going to grow in a material way that the street cares about by going out and saying, "Hey, we signed 3 new contracts with 200 room hotels." Nobody cares.
Right. But I'm also going to say this: our market has been in a growth market for as many years as we want to count, and breaking world records and so forth. And I'm sorry, but we're a bunch of potato farmers in Ireland, and it's just about ready to hit the blight. Okay.
Well, I was just reading the Cleveland research recap the other day, and I was concerned. Like a couple other articles I read about the development pipeline of some of the major brands made me think that they were overdeveloping in certain areas. But Cleveland research, at least through 2020, showed that the development pipeline was holding pretty steady at a 2% supply increase for the last few years, which is much better than like the booms in the 90s and 2008. Right. At least that was somewhat reassuring, at least from a total supply increase, that it was around that 2% mark versus 3 and 4%. So
and that growth, by the way, is not coming necessarily from building new hotels, though some of it is. So a lot of it is taking a hotel that was an independent and flagging it as a branded property, right? So some of that pipeline.
Well, some of the pipeline
existing rooms.
Well, the other caveat in that report is, I guess, I want to say CBRE said that Airbnb, in terms of supply, may be offering an additional 2% that isn't included in the up to 2% that isn't included in the report for urban markets.
Right. Absolutely.
So that's together, we're kind of screwed in terms of supply
of dynamic inventory that comes in and goes out of the market in unpredictable ways.
The real dagger to the heart of that
a real problem.
It doesn't just go away, but it can go over and do that whole rate dilution because of its availability. And that's
the other factor on that one also is what you just said about the music's going to stop for some people somewhere at certain points, and that's absolutely true. That doesn't mean Marriott goes under. It means that 2 properties in this market fold, 2 properties in this market fold, 2 properties in this market fold, etc. And it reduces the number of rooms in a given market, or rooms in pipeline that will never get built, right?
Because they didn't get financing.
I'm sorry?
Because they didn't get financing.
Because they didn't get financing, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
But, I mean, we used to make buggy whips and make buggy carriers. Nobody expected Henry Ford to start making the production line. We don't know where there might be a difference of something coming in like that.
I hear what you're saying. Well, yeah, there is. It's called Airbnb and OYO. And let's be really fair. The difference between Henry Ford and buggy whips is, first of all, it's a good analogy, but hotels have existed since, Mary and Joe were looking for some place to stay on Christmas Eve. They just didn't call it that yet.
That's
right.
Overbooked.
Right. There's an inn in Japan that has been continuously owned by the same family for 2,000 years, 1,500 years.
The understanding in the inn,
But, right. Hotels will always exist.
Hey,
the means by which we bring them to the market, the ways by which consumers choose to book them, that's changed immensely in the 20 plus years I've been in the industry.
Sure.
Right.
But even to your point, that Stephanie pointed out, we might have hotels that don't have buildings. They just might be individual locations in different places. Totally. And the methodology of finding them and booking them is completely on a single interface. We don't need to have check-ins at that point. We can go to
today. It's called Airbnb. It's called right. It's
right.
Called
and what hotels can do to create that? Who knows? I mean, that's what I'm saying is that there is still a modality like OYO brought into the world, as you said, a variation to disrupt the model. They went a little faster than they should. They're getting a little black eyes behind them a little bit now.
Here's where I was willing to make that bet before, because this is exactly right. And Stephanie hit it exactly on the head with the financing thing, right? Hit it exactly on the head. Why did Marriott buy Starwood? Marriott bought Starwood because Starwood failed to grow. Mm-hmm. Starwood went to the street for several consecutive quarters and said, we don't have a path to growth. And the street started saying, then we're not going to invest in you. We don't have any confidence in your ability to grow as a company. And Marriott snapped up Starwood at a bargain basement price for all practical purposes, right? Starwood failed. Let's be really blunt.
Oh, yeah. With half the value, right? Half the value being Starwood preferred guest, which really screwed up Starwood because that made it so they couldn't piecemeal it and go, let's auction off Sheraton, let's auction off, Westin. That's where they couldn't do it. SPG was too. They had to sell it in a piece, which was why they only got $12 billion for that. And then Marriott went out and said, oh, you own a bunch of these. Look at that. Wow, let's start selling these off. And I think their net was probably like maybe $3 billion. I haven't really done the math on it. It was probably $2 or $3 billion. Maybe they might have even sold for more. They might have sold off the assets for more than what they paid to buy it.
And in 10 years' time, is it possible that happens to Marriott? Sure, it's possible. I don't think it's likely, but it could happen. Is it possible it happens to Hilton? Sure. Is it possible it happens to, IHG? Sure. Is it possible it happens to Hyatt? Sure. We don't know who it could happen to. I don't think all the big players who are around right now are around in 10 years' time as a standalone entity because they marry up with somebody else because they run into a problem of figuring out how to grow, right?
Yeah.
Why did Travelocity and Orbitz get bought by Expedia? For the same reason.
Well, that was air traffic that they were not monetizing all that air traffic by high margin hotel sales.
The street pulled their funding, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It came back to financing. They didn't have the financial resources to grow, and so the only there's a term that people who follow the stock market a lot are familiar with of companies who are exploring strategic options. Which is what they say when they mean we can't figure out how to grow, so we're hanging out a for sale sign.
Yeah. The meal's done. Check, please. Check, please.
Right. Somebody somewhere along the way will explore strategic options. We just don't know who or how or why. And is it possible that Marriott gets bought by Oyo in 10 years' time? As ludicrous as that sounds today, it's possible. It happens, right? AOL bought Time Warner 20 years ago, and nobody saw that coming, right? It didn't work out, but clearly AOL had the cash, and Time Warner didn't, right?
Yeah. And if there's a big downturn, the interesting thing is the brands won't be as hurt as badly as the owners probably in the downturn. Right. But I agree. I think there will be fewer holding companies, but I just don't see something that stops them from continuing to just splinter out into all these little kind of nonsensical brands just to get like individual this, individual that, acquire them. And I don't know, some on the market, guys will hate when I say that, groups like Omni, I would think that would be very attractive. It just depends if the current ownership, if somebody can write them a big enough check, right, to go, that's a nice portfolio. Let's bring that thing into one of the big guys. I'm sure every IHG, Wyndham, everybody would love to have Omni at it, right?
Look at Omni.
Hyatt, a ton of them would just love to have it. Yeah. So, but again, they may be looking at it going, that's a possibility. Not right now. Let's keep doing what we're doing. That's good, and maybe we'll get a few extra billion a few years from now.
And I wouldn't be shocked. And I wouldn't be shocked if in 10 years' time, somewhere in the next 10 years, somebody turns around, one of the brands who went all asset light turns around and decided, nope, we were wrong. Real estate's the way to go. And they buy one of the big ownership groups, or they buy one of the big management companies, or they buy, you know what I mean? Like they get into another layer of the value chain in a different way.
Actually, that's a very interesting, and I haven't seen people make that dark. You should write a blog post on that, Tim. I think that, I don't know.
Where is growth going to come from?
But you start looking at, what do? You've had all this fragmentation of ownership, management, and brand, right? Well, if it cycles back, how do you go? Let's go vertically integrate this thing, up. And Marriott goes out and goes, well, and I don't know if Marriott can do it. Maybe they start getting into some antitrust issues because once you're, that big, other people
goes and buys
Cambridge or something like that. That starts getting, a little tricky, and we're gonna go grab the Apple reader, or something like that. That starts getting a little dicey.
Or Oyo does, right? And I mean,
absolutely,
So there's a lot of different ways this could shake out. But I wouldn't predict on it. I wouldn't suggest it's going to look like it does today at the end of 10 years. I use this quote all the time about, we always overestimate the change we will see in the next 2 years and underestimate the change we will see in the next 10.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
But 2022, I think, is going to look more or less like right now. 2030.
But the hotel groups who have that full control of management and ownership and brand, they aren't necessarily huge, but you know what? They can do interesting things, right? And they can make things happen, and do things with their tech stack, because again, they've got all the incentives to make all of those things work together, get all those silos, eliminated, because they've got control of the whole thing.
And Lauren, where I think you're absolutely right is I think it will get increasingly easy for independent hotels to put themselves out in the marketplace and attract guests directly and things along those lines and succeed and grow. I think that's absolutely true, because the tech stacks get increasingly smart, increasingly effective without requiring, scalability in the way that you need today and things like that. I think there's a bright future for true independent hotels. Maybe there's a very real cap that the number we hit is 80% of rooms are flagged and it never goes above that. But 10 years ago, I was incredibly bullish on independents. We're going to have it so easy to stay independent that none of them would flag. And over the last 10 years, the trend has been that hasn't proved true, right?
That's why I'm in business today.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah,
the nice thing is there's enough of them out there that we can all eat, right?
Yeah. I feel I'm still on the bullish side of things. I think that depending upon the downturns and the absorption of technology and so forth, that I see ownerships looking at deflagging their properties because of a lot of the concerns we've talked about on the show before, being brand saturation and so forth and what have you, percentage contribution based on brand and they already have the hotels running. They don't need the financing anymore. They've run their business as is. They're stopping to chase the carrot of increasing their brand connectivity, and they are realizing that they can run profitably better by not being under the thumb of the brands.
By the way, when I worked at Leading, the thing that we did a lot of was we had quite a few groups who were Leading members. And usually we didn't take every hotel in the group, but we took many of the hotels in the group. So Baglioni or Trump or I'm forgetting some obvious ones.
We had Mandarin Oriental for a while.
Right? And what we were always conscious of and cautious about, and I've been gone long enough that I think I can say this without violating any, confidentiality or things like that. This is 8 years ago, right? Almost 9 years ago, is that what we didn't want to be was training wheels for groups, right? We were an incubator that helped them gain their chops and learn how to grow and things like that, and then dump us at the earliest opportunity. We didn't think it was a good growth path for us to sign up tons of groups. And today, at least last I knew, I haven't looked at Leading's membership lately, but last I knew, they signed very few multi-chain members. It's all true independent. So you're right. There's going to be independents. There are going to be independents who can grow into small chains or even larger chains, the Two Roads of the world or things along those lines, or the Rocco Fortes or the, folks along those lines. So there's absolutely opportunity there. The difference is, again, when we're talking a Marriott, a Hilton, an IHG, a Wyndham, and the like, their growth, Rocco Forte, I don't know how many properties it has, but what is it, 20? It's a huge number, right? Baglioni, I think, is like 10. So those are, multi-$100 million companies. These are not little businesses. Right. Also, if Marriott snapped up Rocco Forte tomorrow, it would not be material to earnings.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just too small to be in the ocean, right? It's not scalable is the situation we're talking about, right?
I'm going to blow the Gandhi on you. No matter how big and imposing it may be at the time, eventually all leaders fall.
Sure.
Well, and just telling Leading Hotels story, I apologize, but back, I think my first act as a corporate director of marketing planning for Four Seasons was to pull the Four Seasons members out of Leading Hotels of the World, right? Because it made absolutely no sense for the company to be spending money to go be, have to basically help that brand, develop and, that sort of thing. So
Tim, we're close to the top of the hour, and I know you usually will try to grab some sort of lunch before you have your next call, which we know usually runs around that time.
Yeah, and I've got to leave. I've got to leave at the top of the hour because my New Year's resolution is to be more like Tim. So.
Wow.
Well, that's your head. That is a terrible resolution.
Yeah, that might be the worst one.
I'm easing into it. Yeah.
That's a bad resolution. For starters, you have hair.
Yeah. But I mean, there's some other great articles. There's some irritating articles as well. Hotel News Now was a frustrating one, but I always, when I read those ones, I think of Tim, where he's like, look, it's just like a coach of a football team. They can't tell you their game plan on TV. So a lot of the rhetoric on that article, which, by the way, somebody in Hotel News Now has got to realize that their site is unsecure. Please get your SSL updated.
Yeah, and it's interesting. They didn't have many postings over the holiday. A lot of vacation. I mean, it's like, hey, you're a news outlet. You got to kind of keep generating stuff.
You got to keep rolling with it. But
yeah, it'll be interesting to see their new real estate. Who's a Core who bought STR. We'll see if they feel that that's something that they keep going, or they go and sell it off to somebody. Who knows?
Any preference, Mr. Tim?
The only one I'm going to say was, I would encourage everybody, as I like to do. I only skimmed it, but I like Robert's boop that he adds.
Oh, I added the boop. Yeah, that was the New Year's thing. So we have the rut row, right? Which was it kind of ended things on kind of a little bit of a downer, right? To scare people. And I thought, well, why don't we have something for a boop? So we can, and I had to come up with a name, but I went with the canine, kind of the nose.
I loved it. I thought it was great.
High five type thing.
And it is the best new hotels. CNN listed their picks for the best new hotels people should go and visit in 2020. And here's the thing. Since this is our first show of the new year and things like that, I look at it and I go, I love this industry, man. What makes this industry great is there's a lot of great hotels out there and a lot of great hotel operators doing a lot of cool things to make extraordinary experiences for guests. And what better way to close out our first show of the year, from my perspective, than to tell people, go out and travel and see some cool hotels and go stay new places and see things. And, we will have lots of time during the course of the year to talk about over tourism and talk about, some of the challenges in the industry and climate change and things that we ought to be conscious of. And also, there's a lot of cool stuff. Even if you don't go to some place that's over toured, get in the car and go 20 minutes to some town you've never stayed in and go someplace neat, If you live in the woods, go to the city. If you live in the city, go to the woods, see something new, do something different. Travel is awesome, and it gets you closer to people, and we learn, and we grow, and we become better as human beings when we interact.
The one thing I liked about this one was that none of the places really per se were in high tourist-driven areas.
Yeah.
Right.
I like the fact that, when you look at the tragedy that's happening in Venice. I mean, it's a tragedy.
For sure.
Yeah.
The tragedy is happening in Australia at this point, even. I mean, I didn't realize the scope until they said, you take the Amazon and every other fire in the world and add them all together, and they're still only half the size of what's happening in Australia right now. Yeah. I mean, that's amazing, the actual what's going on. So thoughts and then for everyone that's there. But the nice part, as you said, the amazing part of our industry is that, these places popped up, some of them from tragedy, like the one down in Australia, the cyclone flattened the island and they rebuilt. And so here's a whole new opportunity to come back and see something that wasn't there before. But I do like the fact that it's not pointing, go to the Grand Canyon, go to Venice, go to Rome. As a matter of fact, there was a show that was also live on LinkedIn that was talking about how Naples has turned into a really neat destination. It's affordable. The food's wonderful. Of course, there's history. And there's a lot of people that are disillusioned with Rome, disillusioned with Venice, disillusioned with Florence because of the oversaturation of tourism. And they're finding their way now to places like Naples, close to Vesuvius, close to Pompeii. And they're having a whole nother venue of opportunity that, yes, they got tourists before, but now they seem to be back into a little bit more of a spotlight because it is something different than what's being oversaturated.
Yeah.
There are some amazing places to see.
This is definitely that's flat out hotel porn. I mean, these are great hotels, sort of thing.
Okay, Mr. Tim, since it is that time for you to go grab some food, if you want to know more about you, what is it you do, and the amazingness that you have as a blog, which is all of the internet combined, where can they find you?
All the knowledge of the internet combined. You have all the other stuff. That's called somewhere
Google.
Else.
Or I'm sorry. or my mantra for 2020, duckduckgo.com. But you can find me at timpeter.com. I am at tcpeter on Twitter.
Well, with that, I mean, we have more topics, obviously, and we have a little bit more time, obviously. And so I just want to be mindful of the fact that we get you for these rare privileged moments of an hour and a half-ish before you're off flying on your private jet somewhere. So,
that's very kind of you, Lauren. That is very
well, also knowing that Tammy's not feeling well, I'm expecting that there's a call in the background of needing to be brought chicken soup very soon.
That is likely true, but I always love it when I can make it because I get way more than I give. So I always appreciate the fact that I can join and get.
And Tim is not using it. It's a new decade. He's been very eco-sensitive. He is no longer flying. He now travels by throne chair. So it's very nice. Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to bring jobs into the economy.
Exactly. He's helping employment.
You
Yeah.
find
Health,
six strapping young men
exercise.
to,
Yeah.
like, carry that thing around.
Talk about
and
employee wellness. We need to get some exercise, folks. Let's go. Let's go to the liquor store.
I think, actually.
And I do want to take a moment to remind everyone that Tim will be, along with all of us, at the marketing conference for HSMAI January 23rd, the day after the Adrians, where we'll be seeing Stuart walk around with his platinum award, or I know he's already got a gold, but if he gets platinum,
22nd,
there's no conference room big enough for his head, because he'll be like, boom, boom. I'm sorry, did you see this award? Did you see that? So we know that's going to happen, but all of us are going to be. If you listen to his show now, it is now called the award-winning Fuel Travel Podcast, not just the Fuel Travel Podcast.
And well-deserved award, by the way.
A well-deserved award.
Absolutely. I would argue it is the best pure podcast in the industry for folks wanting to learn how to market more effectively.
Absolutely true. And he's got a good team of, I think,
we range far afield.
I think we are tongue-in-cheek calling it award-winning.
Yeah. Oh, no. It's deservedly so. I thought I saw Melissa pop in and watch the show a little bit. I didn't know from your team.
She did. Yeah. She'll be on the show this afternoon, and she might have a rant today. She had put together notes for a show that we decided, it's the first time we've ever decided to not run a show as was written, because it was a full-on rant companies and how bad they are. But
a full-on rant
on what?
PMS companies.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh.
Property management systems, and how bad they are and how bad their booking engines are, because they're really, really bad. But we decided we're going to do one on gift cards, actually, based on Lily and I did a presentation for AHOA a few weeks ago on gift cards. So we're going to kind of repurpose that as an episode.
Okay. So Stuart, new business model. You should do that show, record it, and then sell it as pay-per-view. That would be just like the big boxing fight.
It would be.
Yeah, it'd be like
it's going to come out in some form. I think we just need to soften it a little bit, because Melissa has. I've worked with her for over a decade, and I've never seen her as livid as she's been in the last couple of weeks. Working
all
what I would affectionately refer to as idiots. Yeah.
Okay, you gotta share that privately, Stuart. Come on.
So did you guys record
the
show? Did you record it? Or
no, she just
it's a script.
Some notes, some
script. Okay.
Yeah, we don't really script it. We just kind of have a framework, an outline of an episode, and then we just kind of, as you can tell, we drink beer and talk bollocks. But
wait, so you don't do the script that we do here on the show, the highly prepared, heavily rehearsed. Yeah.
Oh, this is hours.
4 days of rehearsal.
It goes. Tim's podcast is here, production quality, then this, and then ours is like on the floor from there. So
no, it's actually.
That's not fair. I've been on it. You guys are organized.
Yeah, you guys are organized. No fooling about this. This is disorganized. Yours is organized. No, but it is for those who are not familiar with this podcast. It is at fueltravel.com/podcast, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure is. And Tim's got a phenomenal podcast.
Yes, he does,
love, and it always makes me feel smarter.
Thinks out loud.
Makes you feel smarter. Oh,
yeah.
I don't know. I thought
makes me feel smarter. Actually, it makes me realize I'm dumb and then get smarter as I listen. So yeah.
I do. I have to echo a compliment about your podcast. I will listen to your podcast, follow your train of thought, and always get an aha moment out of it. Going,
Yeah, you're really good. There's two things Tim does really, really well. One, he threads things together into a single.
We need to stop this.
But they're only only two, Tim.
So
that's it. That's
there's only two things. Everything else you suck at. Really well.
Okay, that's better.
You thread multiple things together into some really concise in digestible thought, which I really like. And a lot of times it's a thought I didn't already have, which it's rare, right, that people can do that on a consistent basis. So kudos to that. The other thing you do is you talk in the most tweetable way. Like you have so many platitudes and sayings that are the most succinct, compact way of articulating an idea. You are the most tweetable human being I've ever met, I think.
It's like the Princess Bride movie, only on podcasting.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you one of those platitudes right now. And people who, since we have folks who are hotel marketers listening to this, right? You always want your content to be snackable, shareable, and sharp.
See,
snackable,
my point. Right,
but snackable so that people can, consume it quickly and easily, right? Shareable, which means two things, by the way. It means that there should be the physical mechanisms by which they should share it, and it should fit in a tweet and things like that. But more importantly, people need to care to share. Like, why would they even bother to share it in the first place? If it doesn't inspire an emotional reaction, nobody's ever going to share it. And sharp means it's got to be to the point.
Yeah.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice for hotel marketing content. Horrible advice for snack foods, but that's okay.
Anyway, the point originally started with all this. All of us will be at the marketing conference, and it's a lead into why the marketing conference is of high value is because it is truly one of the strongest networking conferences you can go to in this industry. I think all of us are in agreement where it's like, if you're going to go to a conference of hospitality related to marketing, digital marketing, or just marketing, revenue management and its integration with marketing, this is that conference that you want to go to, because anybody that's doing anything in this space that wants to be in the front line of this as to what is happening now, that comes to this conference. I mean, it's grown, I wouldn't say exponentially, but it has grown to being now, I think 600 some odd plus people are going to be coming.
No. It's still only it can't because the space. They can't go over 350. Right. It's like 300 or 350. I think is the absolute max.
They just kick out the bottom 100 and add a smarter 100 every year. So
on top of that's what we're doing. It's like out of Cheers, the theory of the herd, the buffalo drinking the beer.
That's right. We
fill out the slow
culling the herd as we go.
Yeah, but we will be doing coverage outside the room again this year. So you'll see our table outside, and we're going to try to pull people off the stage. Robert, you still got that hook and duct tape, right? And we'll pull them off the stage to go over and bring them to go over and debrief their presentations as best we can. We'll have some coverage of it. And then we'll get I think the hospital HSMEI is recording some of the sessions this year and might bring them back for replay. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that they're moving forward with that, because
that would be a good idea. For
the content is phenomenal this year.
Stephanie said, you said you were presenting or you have a breakout. What is your topic?
Yeah.
What the brands don't do in the marketing world.
Yeah.
Oh. Well done. But Cogwheel Marketing just coincidentally might do. Huh, what a coincidence!
Yeah,
how convenient.
So the first part of the session is an all-day session, and then the
I know, it's weird how that lined up. But for the record, I submitted 3 topics. They chose it, so I can't be at fault.
I submitted a topic, but somebody else is doing it.
You've been a trooper all day, and very effective use of the mute button.
You like that?
That was really well done. All right. Folks, I do have to bolt. It is always a pleasure seeing you. Happy New Year! I look forward to seeing you next week
on the show.
Again, I saw that.
Hey Tim, did you see Star Wars yet? I don't remember if we had the conversation.
I saw Star Wars.
Thumbs up.
I gave it a solid, thumbs vaguely up-ish.
Oh wow!
7 out of 10.
Yeah, that's solid.
Solid.
Yeah, that's maybe 6-ish of 10 or something. Yeah.
I think it failed to live up to the hype. I don't know how it was possible that it could live up to the hype, and I think most of the people who disliked it didn't actually watch the movie. They just didn't see the movie they wanted to see.
That's exactly right. You're exactly right.
It's an okay movie. It's not the best movie. It's not the best Star Wars movie, but if you watch it as a movie, it's an okay movie. Right. Go see Knives Out though. That's the best movie in theaters right now. Knives Out is well worth seeing.
All right. I will definitely do that. Mr. Tim, our well wishes to the family, health-wise, speedy recovery, all that good stuff.
May you all stay healthy. And since we're talking Star Wars, I have to close with a Star Wars quote. Live long and prosper. Really just to annoy Stuart.
Yeah,
All right, folks. You guys are awesome. I will see you next week.
All right, Tim, thank you so much.
Yeah, I've got to head too, guys. So,
all right, Stuart. Well, before you run, make sure that we talk about the award-winning podcast yet again.
Well, I feel like we already did it. Yeah, but yeah, check us out, fueltravel.com/podcast. That's where it all is. So
and just so anybody knows, we're doing a kegger. Was it January 22nd evening or 23rd evening? When are we going out, Stuart? We're just gonna.
I don't know, because I've got one night I have the dinner with the advisory board, so I got to figure out what time that is.
Advisory board. They're just a bunch of yahoos who sit around talking about each other. It's not worth it.
I'm actually flying to New York. I'll be there on Monday, so I don't know when you guys get there. So could do Monday night.
I'm actually going there Monday as well, so we could do.
So maybe Monday night.
Yeah, we do a hangover Tuesday afternoon or something.
Yeah.
Actually, I want
a couple of meetings on Tuesday, but nothing major.
Well, I was about to say, for all those that may not know, there's a lot of free seminars seminars that don't really get high attendance that are on Tuesday afternoon that are really good. I mean, yes, it's semi-quasi product presentation.
They're all vendor slots.
Yeah. But it does give you a chance to listen to their best pitch. I mean, in all honesty, you go to these websites and everything else, like this, you're always going to get this elevator pitch. Here you get a little chance to, at least for them to expand a little bit with some content. And not all vendors are evil or bad, but then, there are those that are. We can give you a list if you like. Just send an email. We'll send you a list.
Some of them definitely are.
Some of them are definitely evil. By the way, Stuart, thank you very much as always.
Yeah.
The happiest.
Oh, and we're going to have a booth this year at the show. You know how they had the little table toppers in the main conference room.
So we got one of those this year. What do you give away? What kind of
exclusive? We give away free handshakes, hugs, and the gift of knowledge. So those are the gifts that we give.
For those who know how to turn it on. Okay.
Yeah. We don't believe in that nonsense. I mean, people will come just for the tchotchkes, but we want to have deep, meaningful conversations about how we can help drive revenue for your business. So.
Who's coming with you off your team?
I got a couple. Ben's definitely coming, and we're trying to figure out if one other person's going to come too. So
you bringing any honey in the beer? What's going on? I mean, some of the good stuff.
I might bring some homebrew if I can smuggle that into my. I don't know if I'm going to check it back. I could check a cooler. You got me thinking. I might bring some homebrew for you to try.
Yeah, Anyways, all right.
Yeah. All right, guys. Fueltravel.com. See you guys.
Bye, Mr. Stewart.
Bye.
So we need the rot row is the last one we haven't done yet. Robert, I can't hear you. Nope, can't hear you. Nope, you're on mute. Unmute.
All right.
There you go. Wow, we got a quiet Robert. Who'd thunk? Yeah, you're on mute. Well, not anymore, but still no audio. So, hey, Steph, let's do the rot row.
I know the rot row is about. I don't want to ruin it for you, Robert.
Hold on. Characters at Disney World accuse tourists of inappropriate touching. Hold on. Yep. We go back. I gotta go backwards with this because I actually deleted it instead of adding it to it. Now maybe give a chance to Robert to join us on audio, but I'll put it right here. Boom, boom. Okay. So it turns out that not everybody is in the Magic Kingdom frame of mind when they go to the Magic Kingdom. But not to be fair, there's nothing fair about this. Airline people on planes, people at restaurants. This goes back to our human trafficking thing, where there's an acceptability and a non-acceptability of people's conduct. Not that human trafficking is not way worse than what we're talking about right now, but just the fact that people feel. What was that on the news recently? There was a news reporter that was covering a marathon of some sort, and on camera, some guy comes by and grabs her. It's like, seriously? I mean, what in any world makes you think that you have the right to touch somebody? Just
not to mention you're on camera, so you're screwed at that point.
Yeah, it's mind-numbing to think that it's even an acceptable proposition. But here in Disney World, where you're worried, everything's about the magic of the experience, and you debase it by bad behavior. Airlines, people walking up and down the aisles, restaurants, servers running between tables. There is no an accident is an accident. If you inadvertently move and hit some, that's a entirely different thing than a willful intent. there has to be that distinction. You bump into people anytime. I mean, you may not see them or whatever have you, but and some of them can be funny as to how you bump into them. But the idea of willfully doing this kind of conduct is, and this happens in hotels too. And I mean this from having been a GM. I had housekeepers that had to come tell me about guest conduct when they were servicing a room or in a hallway. My servers in restaurants. When people think they can get away with this kind of stuff, that they think that they have the ability to act like this is ludicrous and totally zero tolerance and acceptable. It's not a matter of, oh, well, sir, maybe sure it doesn't happen again. I mean, inadvertently, like, get the hell out of the hotel. You don't be here.
That's why, isn't it now 3 states that have the panic devices approved for housekeepers, or it's required by state law? I think
required. Yes, there's more states that have it available, but it's not a law yet. Yeah. California's one, Oregon.
Washington, definitely. I thought it was Illinois, Washington, and
Illinois. Okay.
That would make sense. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah. I got you.
Oh, good. Oh, I came back. I don't know what the problem was. Actually, I've got to run. Actually, that was partly when I saw it when I came up with the boop. It was because of this rut row. So I thought we need to balance this stuff out. But actually, I have to run. Yes, this is a horrible topic, and I don't know. Certainly with the with devices for notifications and things like that. But I don't know how you really control some of that stuff. I mean, it's just obviously not socially acceptable, and you've got to somehow do that. But I don't know. The preventive measures for it are.
I don't know. I mean, even as you point out with the camera, even on camera, people are willing to try to do something stupid like that. Yeah. I don't know if it's as preventable as it is. How do you handle it once it's been made aware?
Right.
I think that's how you react to it.
Prevention's always the best, but this is a tough one. But anyway, I've got to run. I will see you guys next week.
Sir McCall, if you want to know more about you, where do they find you, sir?
rockcheetah.com or at Robert K. Cole on social media.
Thank you, Mr. Robert.
See you guys later. Bye.
Bye now. Steph, I'm sorry, we kept walking over when you were going to say something.
No, the part that made me sad, if you read all the way to the bottom of the article, they think that the woman that, accosted the person the employee at Disney, that she might have dementia, and that just makes me extra sad because dementia is a brutal thing to deal with in any capacity. So not to say that the employee deserved it, but it still makes me double sad.
No, it's true. I mean, I lost my mom to dementia. It comes on quick, and it is you lose them, but you don't lose them. And same too with Alzheimer's and anything like this, or anyone that has special needs being taken advantage of because of their limited capacity or something, in as itself makes it twice as brutal. It's one thing. No, it's not even that. There's just no excuse to any of it. There's just, I mean, in the world of anything, there is no rationale that says that you should be allowed or have the capacity to be able to do something like this to anyone, regardless of their capacities. And this is just an example of it from what we see on anything from a hospitality side. And again, going back to, and I'm sure when Kat joins us on the show again, a constant reaffirmation that this is the month for human trafficking awareness. That is the base aspect of this. That can be happening, but there are several levels also associated with it, like this inappropriate touching, groping, and so what have you, and inappropriate conduct with anybody that's on your team. That you should make sure that everybody in the team that you work with is aware that they have a channel of communication, that they can go without any sort, with impunity, because they should have every right to be able to bring this to attention that this happened to them in some capacity, so that the appropriate actions can be taken. That if this is a guest that's acting inappropriate, then management has to react to that. It can't just, oh, hey, they're here for X number of nights, spending X number of dollars. Just, we'll just stay away from them. That doesn't work anymore. That's not an answer to the solution. That you have to go in and solve the issue directly with the person that created the problem. So there is no tolerance. There is zero tolerance capacity for this kind of stuff anymore. So, not to leave it on a sour note, but we went through the best amazing places to stay, and then we went through the reasons that there's still issues that we always have to take care of. But it is a fun New Year's, and thank you for making it through the. I know you have been fighting the coughing and the everything else process to it, but it's a joy to have you back on the show, Steph. If they want to know more about Cogwheel Marketing, what you do, and where they can reach you, where is it they can find all that?
Stephanie Sparks Smith on LinkedIn and cogwheelmarketing.com, and I got called out the other day. I'm also a partner at Cayuga Hospitality Consultant. So if there are any individual consultants out there that want to join with a very passionate group of not only hoteliers, but also anything from, food and beverage consultants, spa consultants, anything that falls within that hospitality realm. We even have legal advisors, all that specialize within that hospitality field. Come check us out, Cayuga Hospitality Consultants.
So. It's interesting you bring that up because I've been pursued by several different fractions of saying, hey, we're an aggregate of consultants and we bring things to the table. And it is kind of neat because as much as I'd like to think that I have a unique proposition of, not being an agency, but being a at scale ad hoc service provider, there is a model changing. These agencies that sit around having to feed a lot of cubicles and a lot of office space and a lot of overhead are being challenged by people like your consulting group that are saying, look, you don't have to pay for all that. We can bring in people that know what they're doing whenever you need them to do it and do what you need done and then step away, and not have to create that burden of overhead that's persistent in the relationship. And I always say the creation of dependency, where they find the reasons to charge monthly fees for things that aren't monthly done. And so I think there's a new emerging solution process that as people dust off their new budgets this year, and I'm hoping that they're looking at the evaluative process of their current relationships, because that annual transition inspires that kind of review. Like, okay, so are we getting everything out of our vendor relationships? Are we getting everything out of our service profiles? That you look at the new playing field, and new or newer playing field of services like that say, hey, look, there's a different way of doing the same work, maybe even better, because you're buying the best person to do this rather than the least common cost denominator within an agency to fulfill it. When I go checkbox services. So
yeah, there's definitely two different things that we've noticed happening in terms of do you need someone full time on a regular basis to do this versus just bringing somebody in to do analysis when you're buying, selling, whatever, transitional, and then also just project work in terms of are our vendors providing, do we need somebody to keep this in check from a performance standpoint? So it's and there's also the value of the network, meeting other individual consultants that are in the same boat where you can find synergies and partner together on specific projects.
And if people don't understand that we're competing with each other, we really don't. It's like a big ocean. It's kind of like, we do the same things, but that's like saying I have a cup of water compared to the ocean. It's like there's plenty of business for and it's a matter of preference of how you like things done and who you do them with. It's, the world's big enough for everybody to exist. There's too much business for one of us, let alone two of us, let alone 1,000 of us. So, it's a matter of how you like business being done and the experience of the people you're working with. And there's plenty of great resources out there, you being one of them. So now that we solved the world's problems. All right. Well, Steph, thank you very much again for the time. For everyone that joined us on all the live platforms that we broadcast on, I'm going to be doing my podcast after this and a quick recap of some of the conversations we had. That will go up in about an hour after I get it edited. So you'll see that pop up on 39 different podcast platforms now. I broke the 2,000 mark finally, Steph. I got over 2,000 subscribers in 4 weeks. So things are going on with the distribution of it, I guess. So anyways, for this show and all previous 239 shows, 229 other shows, you can go to currently hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. Look for episode number 230. The link will be having the replay, all the links and the associated content that we referred to today, plus ones we didn't get to. And 231 next week. Oh, we have a guest next week from Condo World. Alex from Condo World is going to be joining us to talk a little bit about from his perspective. They're doing some pretty cool stuff. It's a relationship that Stuart has, and so it should be a fun conversation with that. So I'll be posting that up when we send out the email to, Tim, who has 688 emails and 689 emails, and you have 2 of them. So, all right. With that, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next Friday, 11:30 Eastern. Remember, this gets co-soundcast APAC, 11:30 Wednesday Sydney time, and London, 11:30 London time for the EU group. So with that, bye, everyone.
Have a good one. Happy New Year.
Thank you.